Stand by the Conservative Party manifesto commitments when it came to tax and spending.
And we're going to meet all our manifesto commitments as well. Unless I specifically tell you otherwise, Mel, the manifesto you and I fought on is, and it's an important point because we won't be blown off. Of course, we will deliver 40 new hospitals. We're well on track to delivering 20,000 more police officers. We will recruit 50,000 more nurses, and heaven knows the need for those nurses has never been more apparent to our country. We're going to get on. We're going to get on with our programme.
But as you could hear there, Mr. Stride was trying to press the Prime Minister on how the Treasury Treasury plans when it came to increases of income tax, VAT, or national insurance contributions. All three were in the Tory Party manifesto last year. Were promised that there would be no increase in those taxes, but Mr. Johnson could not offer that categorical reassurance yesterday.
I would share your instincts, Mel, to try and keep taxes as low as we conceivably can, consistent with our desire to invest in our fantastic public services. But I don't want to anticipate what we're going to do on our economic package. That's for a bit later on.
Now, yesterday, Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, also announced more details around the track and tracing scheme. It's going to affect up to 2 million people at any one time. Much stricter controls, Nick, up to isolating up to 14 days rather than 7 days, as that was one option the NHS and the government could have imposed. As I said, affecting 2 million people, and we were discussing yesterday, you're discussing on your programme how it might affect those from poorer households, housing estates being locked down. Mr. Hancock said yesterday it was people's civic duty to self-isolate if required.
It is the right thing to do for themselves, it's the right thing to do for their loved ones and their families, and it's the right thing to do for people's whole communities, because it will make it less likely that wider action will be needed locally, and because it will make it less likely that it's a local flare-up. So the civic duty and the personal responsibility to follow the instructions of NHS Test and Trace is a very important part of what we're asking people to do.
Health Secretary Matt Hancock concluding Theo Usherwood's report there, and he, Mr. Hancock, is with us later in this hour, 7:09. So let's turn to the view of an economist. Julian Jessup is fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs, served as the organisation's chief economist, and joins me now. Okay, Mr. Jessup, it's a tough one, but how do you balance? Obviously, you want to look after people because without them you wouldn't have a workforce at all. But we need to get the economy moving again. How do you balance the two? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I think first of all, in the short term, it does make sense to subsidise jobs in the way you've described. After all, if the government is basically shutting about a third of the economy, then it's only right that the government should pick up the wages of about a third of the people in work. So for now, I think it's the right thing to do. But obviously, we can't go on like this. I mean, for a start, that's an enormous amount of money. You talk about 15 billion, but it's soon going to be in the many tens of billions more than that. It could be as much as 100 billion if the scheme continued in its current form. So that's a lot of money you could have spent on something else. But you've also got to worry about the adverse effect on incentives, paying for people to sit at home and do nothing.
Yes.
Or maybe they should be getting different jobs, giving a free option for employers to keep people on their books, or maybe they should be working for somebody else. So it has to change. The good news is that the government has started easing the lockdown, as we know, so things like non-essential retail is opening soon, hopefully leisure and hospitality will as well. So by the time that the coronavirus job retention scheme is being wound down, I think most people will be able to get back to work as normal.
Is that, when you see what the figures are, the Institute of Directors, 1 in 4 firms say they won't be able to top up the salaries of their workers, so that means a quarter of them, of course, could be in danger of losing their jobs. How confident are you that some of these people are even aware of that?
Well, let's see. I'm told that the Institute of Directors and some of the members are being a bit too pessimistic about the economy. I think the headlines will be dominated by the bad news from April and May in particular, but that's largely good news. But the economy is starting to recover already, even while the official lockdown is in place. And also the job market,
time, because we still don't have the testing and tracing. I know the government announced it yesterday, in place that is just kicking off now. There's no sign of the app that was being trialled in the Isle of Wight amongst huge fanfare. That's gone quiet. And we really should have been doing the testing and tracing for the last 10 weeks. It's 10 weeks since it was stopped. And the government admits in their press conferences that we're still getting new cases of infection running at 60,000 a week. So this outbreak is not under control yet, and I really do worry about loosening all of the restrictions, or even very many of the restrictions, given the situation that the virus is still spreading. And we had the unprecedented example in Weston-super-Mare, a whole hospital having to shut down because of a very serious outbreak in the hospital.
I appreciate that, and that is indeed your role, and that's what you do as an expert in your field, but you must surely have sight of an economy that's tanking. And if there's an economy that's tanking, we won't have the money to pay for treatments for cancer, for strokes, for heart attacks in years to come.
That's absolutely right. And work is important for people, and it's the poorest people who will suffer the most through the economy being locked down. But there is a real problem here. There was a lockdown, but we haven't dealt with the virus, and as a result, we've ended up with this huge death toll, probably the worst per head in Europe by the time we're finished, and the virus is still with us.
What are you saying, sir? What are you saying, sir? You want it completely and utterly eradicated before you start the economy again? There is a risk in everything, as I said earlier. There's a risk in getting up and going down the stairs to the kitchen.
Of course, and the risks have to be balanced. But the death toll also has to be taken into account. And if we reopen too quickly without the testing and tracing being in place in our communities and really working and be sure it's working, then what will be even worse will be if we have to shut it down again, because the cases take off.
Indeed. Thank you for your time. Sorry to get you there. Dr. Gabriel Scully, you're President of Epidemiology and Public Health at the Royal Society of Medicine. And as I say again, many of you will be getting up at this time in the morning. Even walking to the bathroom has its risks. And then if you happen to live in a 2-story or 3-story, walking down the stairs to go to your kitchen, then God forbid, and I hope you are able to work, then you have to get in your car or walk to a railway station or an underground station. There's risks. The numbers are now declining dramatically. This is surely the moment. Your views in a moment. We talked a little bit about Europe. To the European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, speaking in the European Parliament.
This is about all of us, and it is way bigger than any of us. This is Europe's moment.
Well, let's see how it responds. She's talking about the bailout fund from Europe to the US.
An important, very grim milestone in the coronavirus pandemic. The United States has just surpassed 100,000 confirmed deaths.
That's strange, isn't it? President Trump said it's just like the flu. What happened there? 7:15 LBC News headlines. Simon Conway.
The NHS test and trace system for coronavirus opens in England this morning. Everyone who's come into contact with a sufferer must self-isolate for 14 days. The Prime Minister said he hopes the 2-metre social distancing rule can soon be reduced to help the hospitality sector reopen. And the COVID-19 death toll in the US has passed 100,000. And the weather dry with plenty of warm sunshine for most, a high of 24 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb in Kent. The A2 remains closed eastbound from Dartford Heath and the M25 junction, and that's because of an accident and there are lengthy delays on the approach. In Surrey, one lane's closed on the M3 northbound between junctions 3 at Lightwater and the M25 junction, and that's because a car has broken down. Outside Old Street Station, there's been an accident on Old Street eastbound, and one lane is closed, very busy now on the approach. In the centre of town, Cotsworth Street is closed westbound between Trafalgar Square and Haymarket for gasworks.
LBC. I use my ample time indoors to hunt down my odd socks. I found one down the sofa, one in the bread bin, and one in a serious relationship with my cat. But there are better ways to spend your time. That's why Money Supermarket is helping you find cheaper insurance, better interest rates, and easier ways to manage your bills. You can find many more small steps towards money care at Money Supermarket. Call Nick for free now.
cycleways and widening pavements to help. If you must travel off-peak, especially in the mornings. For those who must use public transport, it is now very different. Follow national social distancing measures of 2 metres wherever possible. Wear a face covering over your nose and mouth and wash your hands before and after travel. Our services are regularly cleaned with hospital-grade antiviral disinfectant for everyone's safety. And we're providing hand sanitizer across the public transport network to help reduce the spread of the virus. Thank you for your help. Search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
With Zero, accounting software for small businesses that works anywhere you do.
19 minutes after 7, Paul will talk to you about the economy in just a moment. Headlines as well in a moment. Let me tell you where we are. We told you about that grim milestone for the US. The global picture then of confirmed coronavirus cases now stands at 5,792,989, edging towards the 6 million mark, isn't it? Deaths, 357,480. To the United Kingdom, confirmed coronavirus cases, 267,240. Deaths, 37,460 have succumbed to those symptoms. And my respects to any of you, of course, who've been touched by that. That was an increase yesterday of 412, a little bit more than the figures we were getting used to. And on the testing, we might start suspending this actually, because they do seem to be, I'm delighted to say, hitting 117,013, which is in fact 17,000 above where they wanted to be. So congratulations and commendations to all involved in that. I need to tell you news breaking this time. Listen to BBC 720. EasyJet plans to reduce its workforce by up to 30% to enable a restructure of our business due to the pandemic. The airline confirming that. So grim news if you're someone you know or love is employed by them. EasyJet cutting its workforce by some 30%. I would suggest if they want us all to come back to them post-pandemic, they might start giving cash back to many people. Do you? And we're talking about this later in the hour. It's Ryanair that are in the sights of one organisation because they've not refunded the money. Well, I bet the situation, in fact I know the situation, is the same with EasyJet. I know personally, and I remember speaking with Simon Corbett in one of our conversations. He had independent newspapers or websites travel editor. He's still waiting on cash too, so we're looking at that aspect later. Paul, coming to you in a moment about the economy, quickly through the front pages of the newspapers. A bit of a mixed one. Some of them are still reflecting, I don't know why they go on about nobody comes out. That is, it's not going, move on, alright, just move it. Whether you think you should have gone or you shouldn't have gone is for you to decide. Not going to happen, so we just move on. The Financial Times talking about Brussels recovery group after asking to borrow 750 billion euros, and we've heard from Ursula von der Leyen. This is the defining moment for the European Union. We're looking at that too later in the show. The Daily Mail talks about the test and trace revolution, and indeed we have the Health Secretary with us later in this hour, as does the Daily Express. They talk about too. Test and trace, key to our freedom. The Times seems to be in that court as well. Do your duty. We can defeat the virus. Same sort of story for the Daily Telegraph. Public told they have a duty to test and trace. The front page pictures of many of the newspapers are only mateless. She finds herself in hot water. She did break the BBC rules with the most extraordinary one-sided rant concerning the Prime Minister at the start of a television show, which I believe goes by the name of Newsnight, which unbelievably I was presented. What are they thinking? I think I was used just to put in a bit of right-wingery over there. Anyway, it was an extraordinary time of my career, not one that I particularly want to relive, and I'm damn certain the BBC don't either, so it's never going to happen. Anyway, she seemed to go a bit bonkers at the start of the show, started shouting and screaming. Honestly, I cannot bear TV and radio presenters who shout and scream their own views. It's faintly ridiculous. Nobody gives a damn what you think about anything. Just read the news. Lastly, the front page. Ale meet again. Don't think it works for the front page of the Sun. Great respect to you all, and you know I'm a huge fan of the title, but Ale meet again. No. Pubs to possibly open in June, wouldn't that be great? And the 2-metre rule may be eased. The Daily Mirror is still going on about Boris Johnson, so they, as is the Guardian and Dominic Cummings, they won't let it go. I think they should. We move on as we're going to. We're going to talk about an economy. It's the Institute of Directors say around just over 2 million of you won't realise that the furlough scheme that you're enjoying, your companies, when asked to, and we don't know, but they should be topping up by 20%. in August that's going to end. They're probably going to be asked firms to top up by another 40 to 50. So you're only going to be getting maybe 40-50% of your salary. Will that get you back to work? Paul in Ely. Paul, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Morning, Nick.
Yes.
I hope it would get people back to work.
Yeah.
But if they're hearing